You're right. I should get out.
Yeah, the forest is not that far away.
Hey, Mom!
Come to the forest where the more adventurous you lives. Check out discovertheforest.org for cool places nearby. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service and the Ad Council.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. Be a part of the show by calling 915-544-KTSM, 915-544-5876, or comment online on our stream at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. It's 4 p.m. Mountain Time, and that means it's time to talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thanks for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages we're up on these days, facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter at Talk El Paso, or twitch.tv, Andrew J. Polk. Yes, we are up on all those platforms and have conversations that come in, or at least comments that can come in through pretty much all of those. But whatever is the right place for you to see the show, hear what we got going on, comment if you so choose, or chime in any way that you would like to, that's the right place for you to be as we continue our dual missions to A, have live local talk radio here in the Borderland, and B, talk about the things that are affecting us here, because no one else is going to have that conversation about the many different facets, issues, events, etc. that go on that affect us right here at home. A whole lot of people telling us how we think we should feel or they consider these types of things, but there's always a whole lot more detail that absolutely needs to be gotten into. So getting into some of those issues today, we got a lot going on, including with more about stash houses and rewards programs for the same, even as there are some disturbing discoveries within them. Maybe not totally surprising, and yet not a great thing. Some of the shrines we are seeing, stash house saints, so to speak. And then also different kinds of smuggling being highlighted within the region. We talk about a couple different forms of it, but there's obviously more than can be, more than meets the eye, almost literally in some cases. Also, more on the potential for the expansion of the Bridge of the Americas. We had mentioned this in the past, and now some plans actually being put forth on what it would take to increase one of the busiest ports of entry, not even just in our area, but along the border in general. Also, delving more into the property values thing. Yeah, we've had some of y'all start receiving those notices and that fund that comes with it. What are some of the formulas, numbers, and possibilities for this year that end up going into all of that? We'll try to break some of that down, including some regional coverage, as well as an interesting bill, among others, percolating through the Texas legislature on increasing penalties for gun crimes to minimum standards, regardless of what else was being charged there. So a whole lot more that we're going to be delving into today, as we already have Eric von Holstein-Rathel. Hello with the wave to you as well over on the social media. Those also dropping those likes and reacts. Robbie Flores, Monica Cervantes, Flaco Jimenez, and James Holmes. Do appreciate it. It helps us with all those algorithmic things. RJ promotes there as well. Saw you sneak in. Don't worry, didn't forget that. As we got quite a lot to mention here today. As well as I do mention that I try to pay attention to what's going on over on the social media, particularly Twitter. Can't pop those up, but I appreciate the comment from last week from Captain Sam USA. Because, yeah, if you want to chime in that way and let us know how we're doing, what you think of it, and your take on the issues as well, that's a decently good place to do it as well. So, more on stash houses in the area. We've been talking a lot about it from the Border Patrol perspective, which is still more than reasonable. But the fact that Operation Lone Star is also in our area leads to different types of enforcement and even different focuses. And as reported by our news partners at KFOX 14, Santa Muerte Shrine found at El Paso Stash House during Operation Lone Star. And they have some of the pictures that was discovered early last week, if I'm not mistaken. And, I mean, shrine diorama, I don't know if it's the totally right way to describe it, but definitely, I mean, it's literally a bunch of Grim Reaper looking figures is the best way I can describe it. You know, skeletal, hooded, robed with sickles, the giant reaping instruments, and then also wings, black wings for the most part. The whole Santa Muerte roughly translated Saint Death, even though there's more that comes into it, but notably a popular one amongst the cartels. So this wasn't one of the bigger stash house busts that has happened in our areas. Also, Marky Mandingo, good afternoon to you as well, chiming in over on the social media. Not one of the bigger ones, busts. I think it was in the order of about a dozen or so. 23 were ending up being detained by DPS in this. So not one of the most overcrowded ones. But the fact that we have some of these further iconography in there, and this was actually a U.S. citizen arrested and charged with operating the stash house, is also another interesting note. It's no secret by any means that stash houses have definitely been a tool of both moving people through as well as bilking more money out of said people through the area through smuggling. And that's one of the aspects we often see or comment on for the most part because it keeps coming up. RJ pointing out a level of religion with lots of hope, at least to earn billions. That definitely is one of the folk. I mean, money drives this whole thing. So the even idea of encapsulating that within, I thought that I thought that prosperity gospel was bad enough. This one's just really messed up in a whole lot of ways. It's further noted there and also by Texas DPS, Santa Muerte, also known as Our Lady of Holy Death. There's been a lot of association with cartels that come along with this. But the other reason I want to mention this is that among other the enforcements that have been happening in our area, we mentioned the several hundred, about 130 if I'm not mistaken, so far this fiscal year being found by Border Patrol, CBP, etc. Texas DPS in the last 2 weeks, they have specifically located 5 quote-unquote major stash houses in the El Paso region. And one of the major reasons I'm bringing all of this up, besides a disturbing implications of the iconography, that again, not completely surprising, but still not like a fun thing to see actually happening out here. It's not exactly, oh man, wait, this was the cartels? I had no idea. Yeah, obviously. It's been these guys all along or associated organizations. So again, not surprising, but also not like fun. There's actually a reward program out there specifically from Texas DPS for people to submit a tip to the Texas Stash House Rewards Program. If you have information about criminal stash houses, and up to $5,000 is actually being awarded an offer for information. And you can provide anonymous tips. Crime Stoppers hotline ends up working there, 1-800-252-TIPS. That's 1-800-252-8477. Or it can also be submitted online at p3tips.com/650. That's p3tips.com/650. Because, yeah, I got to say, knowing what's in your neighborhood, who your neighbors are, like, have conversations with your neighbors. We had someone move in to our neck of the woods recently and just kind of went over and said, neighborly hi, how you doing? We had a little bit chat, asked me where the mailbox was, those kind of things. That can be incredibly important in a whole lot of ways, and also to understanding who is in your neighborhood and if there's anything going on. Like, I'm pretty sure there's an Airbnb, and I'm not too concerned about that, besides the kind of traffic. And at least one, it sounded like a drag show late at night. Drag car show, not the clothing kind. Let me make that clear. And that's annoying, but yeah, knowing what's going on in your neighborhood is often neighborhood watch considerations. And so, yeah, Marky Mandingo, $5,000. Wish I knew of a stash house. I wish you did too, and would be able to report it, because seriously, the fact that we have been dealing with in order of magnitude of hundreds already just this fiscal year, and better part of thousands of people that have been pulled out from these, including some that were very notably locked from the outside. Yeah. There's just so many disturbing implications that come with that. Eric von Holstein Rathlow on a lighter note saying, when I lived on the mountain, my neighbor called me the neighbor. I depending on the context, that could be a good or ominous thing. Mark Mandingo also saying, looks like Santa Muerte didn't help. Patron saint of drug dealers and other scum. And statues don't help when American law enforcement is involved. Unless you're like hucking the statues at them, which I'm also not going to condone or even suggest, but yeah. And yeah, RJ promotes also saying 90 in a stash house, some of the more recent busts we've seen this week. How hard can that be to spot? You'd be surprised, because they're often crammed into, even if there's other room in the house, they're not exactly like being allowed to move around or hang out in the backyard or just kind of, shoot the breeze. They are there under lockdown, essentially. I mean, your mileage may vary, but seriously, the cartels don't have a whole lot of regard for human life or what comes with it. And so the people that are trapped there, is not a good situation for them either. Also, Austin Redford chiming in, hey, to you as well, and fellow Talk El Paso listeners. So, yeah, this is not a good situation, though there are, of course, other veins that this even happens. Literally harder to see. We often talk about, again, either the stash houses or what is going on with, again, what I call the rabbiting, but the ditching situation where a vehicle that ends up smuggling persons, as there was at least one suspected action, I do believe, being happening yesterday, according to our news partners at KFOX 14 during our program, that they are presented with law enforcement, a pullover, and then they seem to immediately floor it, and more often than not, end up crashing into someone or something. Not a good situation either. And those are kind of the primary ones that we see of the smuggling happening, but it's certainly not the only one. I've seen rumors and hints of this happening in the area, but another very interesting one further from our news partners at KFOX 14, group illegally in U.S. hide in Texas cave. And the pictures here are the really interesting part, because this is different than even the pictures you see from the stash houses, where it looks like more or less normally dressed people, quote unquote. I mean, not good condition, so I'm not going to call them the most stylish or the most well put together, given the conditions these people have been subject to. But these ones specifically, a group of about, I want to say 13 or so, 18 in total, that were found kind of in the Van Horn area. 18 individuals hiding into it, according to, again, DPS in this one. And their outfits is essentially a hooded camouflage is the best way I can describe it for those of y'all out in radio land. It's kind of, for anyone who has been in or seen previous military uniforms, it kind of almost looks like that previous uniform standard digital camo, though it can be a little bit hard to tell, and clad head to foot into it, except for boots. The footwear seems to be more or less different, but it does specifically include a hood as well. And again, I've seen notes of that, not specifically in our area, but it doesn't surprise me either that this is another feature of what is being done to try and circumvent border enforcement and law enforcement, specifically when it comes to this. This one, not an easy one, obviously, because, well, look at the efforts and the ways they've been done so far, whether it comes to stash houses or whether it comes to the, smuggling by vehicle and the ditching situations. Those are expedient, or at the very least more controllable. In this case, we're talking about literally hiking through the desert, but the added sophistication of, like, seriously, all of them in this kind of camouflage. That's the best way I can describe it. Certainly not quite sure it's totally suited to this area. I know there's a common misconception out there for non-hunters anyway, that camouflage is camouflage. But if you don't know, what was it, that one movie that had it? If you don't know where that forest is or that landscape in our area would be, it's not going to be that useful to you. So I'm a little bit dubious in how effective that would necessarily be, but at the very least, seem to have gotten him to that point, to being in that cave. So another facet of the continually complicated border security and immigration system that we have in this area. Amber Bond asking specifically, how can we tell if a house is a stash house? That's a great question, because unless you can absolutely see that there are a ton of people crammed in there, I think it would be kind of the know your neighbor type situation. Because knowing that, I mean, kind of anytime there's suspicious activity in a neighborhood, of wondering, like, what's going on with the house, like lots of comings and goings late at night, no vehicles you haven't seen before, those kind of things. I feel like there's a cross application between the advice that's been given out between, like, say, drug houses that have been disseminating, or stashes in their own right for that kind of a thing. So if you want to know, and also, some intimations being made about smell for that many humans being crammed in one space with, again, not a lot of liberty. Just know your neighbors, have some conversations with your neighbors. I've spent way too much time in my own life not knowing who the hell I live next to or even near, and I'm trying to be better about that, and that would be a kind of a good start, I guess. RJ Promote saying, constant toilet flushing, if you're listening. Possibly, though, in some of these situations, just my understanding that was not even available to those inside. Again, there's nothing good about these situations, much less for the people that is around, or the people that are being trapped inside, again, these stash houses. This is not a largely voluntary type situation, to my understanding. So more notes about it. But again, that note that there is a reward program is interesting, and hopefully could lead to more people helping to they'll deal with some of this because, ounce of prevention, et cetera, charity, and therefore knowing what's going on starts at home. I don't know. There's a whole lot of ways I could couch that, but we talked about this for a good minute now. We got to take that next break, and coming back, we got more that we're going to talk about, including some other major things, including an interesting report from a person who was inside of the migrant processing or detention center in Ciudad Juarez, speaking out after recovering at El Paso Hospital. So we'll talk more about that, as well as some other things definitely directly affecting us in the region. So let's go ahead and take that next break. You are tuned in to Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. A lot more to get to, a lot more we'll be delving into, and a whole lot more we want to hear from you. So phone lines a little bit later, as we usually do. But in the meantime, keep those comments going and stay tuned to Talk El Paso on News Radio 690 KTSM. Don't go anywhere.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
Big delays right now on the 54 southbound in the Upper Valley from Stan Roberts to McCombs. It's an 18-minute delay. Extra slow on Artcraft with stop-and-go traffic from the state line over to the I-10. It's a 20-minute delay. Downtown on I-10 eastbound from Dallas to Trowbridge. It's a 6-minute stop-and-go delay. And northbound Zaragoza is slow from the Loop to Montana. 10-minute delays. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by Verdict with Ted Cruz.
I'm Ben Ferguson. And I'm Ted Cruz. Donald Trump has been indicted. It's an outrageous abuse of power.
Learn why.
We'll explain what's really happening with the Trump indictment.
So download Verdict with Ted Cruz wherever you get your podcasts.
In this week's Marketers Report, we hear about the importance of local radio from Allison Griffin, head of marketing at State Farm.
iHeart has such a broad broadcast reach that is local, and for us to be able to touch customers with a local feel but at a national scale is so efficient and important for us.
As the #1 audio company, iHeartMedia gives marketers access to the audiences, trusted influencers, and data you need to grow. If you're a marketer, go to iHeartResults.com.
Hi, I'm Burt Ward, Robin from TV's Batman, inviting you to feed your dog natural, non-GMO, Gentle Giants dog and puppy food. Dogs eating Gentle Giants and following our special feeding and care program are living as long as 27 healthy, active years with a wonderful quality of life. Holy wow, 27 years! Think of all the extra years you could enjoy with your dog at Target, H-E-B, and stores near you. Try Gentle Giants cat and kitten food, too.
Are your investments going nowhere? Here's a tip that always pays big dividends. Invest in yourself, your talent, your smarts, your skills. Maybe it's time to make that investment and start a career in IT or upskill to boost your current career. At My Computer Career, you can bank on us. We'll help you get the right skills and the right certifications to start or advance your IT career. IT keeps growing, so go with the growth at My Computer Career. The right training, the right timing, the right career. Invest in you at mycomputercareer.edu. Start now.
It can be dangerously easy to steal your identity during tax season because so much sensitive info is all together.
Before we start the annual meeting of Sean's personal info, has anyone seen Social Security number?
Not me.
Nope.
Nuh-uh.
Oh, no. He's been stolen.
LifeLock by Norton makes it easy to help protect yourself. If you become a victim, we'll work to fix it. No one can monitor all transactions, but you can save up to 25% off your first year with promo code NEWS at LifeLock.com. Identity theft protection starts here.
Always just minutes away from the latest news around town and around the world.
You need to know what's going on.
News Radio 690 KTSM. News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thanks for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages, facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter at Talk El Paso, or twitch.tv, Andrew J. Polk. Again, a lot of comments coming in there, including from Willie Jenkins, a couple of comments and ideas about it takes a village, pay attention and communication with neighbors, and you got to be totally oblivious to that much movement, not concerned or never at home, possibly, when it comes to being, like, say, in the proximity or even next door to a stash house. But I'm going to say this, that, I mean, sure, you would hope people would know. And given the, or at least in my neighborhood, it feels like the prevalence of cameras everywhere would lead maybe to someone to have at least a sneaking suspicion if there was to be one present. But I'll also say this. I've mentioned previously in the past that I spent some time doing background investigations for security clearances, not actually dealing with any of the secret squirrel stuff, but I was talking with those about their qualifications to be able to do so. And some of the basic questions end up coming also down to, okay, who knows you, who can validate, confirm those kind of things. And one of the questions we'd often go to was neighbors. What do you talk to your neighbors? Who can we talk to? And or even just going around neighborhoods near where someone either was or did live in order, you know, like knocking on doors saying, hey, do you know your neighbor? What can you tell me about him? The amount of people, in just my experience, that had just almost no clue besides like, oh yeah, we'd wave like once a week or so, but never went over to their house, never had a conversation. I think I know their name. Like those kind of situations is kind of disheartening. I got to be honest with you, because the amount of people that just the modern world, we're so connected when it comes to technology, and yet to those literally next to us, the whole go inside into the garage door closes, and you're just inside and not speaking with anyone else for the day. Again, I'm completely guilty of this. This is not me sending out a lecture about y'all need to be better. I have been awful with this, except for the fact that my garage is still floor to ceiling with boxes that I also need to deal with. So I'm not doing it that way. It has kind of forced me to then like pay attention to what's going on around me and wave at neighbors, those kind of things. But yeah, I could not name all of my even immediate neighbors if forced to, because some of them I still haven't met despite moving like 6 months, give or take, ago. So it's a situation, it's a problem, and people have to deal with this. And so speaking of homes, an interesting one noted by El Paso Matters. I mean, Willie Jenkins, it is what it is. You got a better relationship with your neighbors, more power to you, but not everyone does. So speaking of homes, El Paso Matters with a very interesting overview on some of the numbers and some of the procedures for the property tax valuations. Some of y'all have been noting as of this week, or early this week, or maybe late last week, starting to get those notice of appraisal from the El Paso Central Appraisal District, EPCAD, as it's very fondly known around my house and family, because okay, we're some of the ones that will just go through and just start looking up properties and histories on them that we're curious about. Yeah, I know it's like reading the dictionary kind of behavior, but I don't expect everyone to live the way I do. Anyway, point is that we've got a lot of notices going out, and it seems like, based on some of the rough numbers some of y'all have said, I haven't gotten mine yet. As soon as I do, I'll try to do a breakdown on the percentages that we are looking at. But yeah, about 10% appraisals looking at. Specifically, El Paso Matters cites that the Texas Real Estate Research Center at Texas A&M University in El Paso shows that home prices were up 11% annualized for the fourth quarter of 2022. Now, your mileage may vary, because also average home valuations in El Paso shot up about 20% to that nearly $190,000 figure for 2022. So that's been on the march and on the increase. Remember, even just a few years back, it was closer to 150. Now, there are a few important caveats that come with all of this. Among other things, if you already have an actual homestead exemption filed for, which is that a bit of fun I'm dealing with right now as well, there are limits to how much it can be raised even currently. But that doesn't mean that it can't continue year after year. Specifically, if you are going to be seeing a significant rise in valuation of your house, and they talk about how these change in a variety of different ways. Again, would definitely encourage you to go look over it. Article title with El Paso Matters, what you need to know about your property tax valuations hitting your mailbox. And yeah, if you're owning the home or anywhere near it, yeah, this is going to be something you're going to want to find out about. They're expected they're saying that most of them were mailed out for residential properties March 31st. Commercial real property notices will be mailed out by April 14th, and then business personal property later in April or May. Rendition deadline dates is what they're citing there. All notices should be mailed out by the end of May is what you can expect there. But so with these valuations changing, there are limits to how much it can change per year, about 10%, give or take. But also, if your house still retains that value for future years, that level can keep increasing. One of the more interesting ones is that Texas state law, and I wasn't totally aware of this, requires that these valuations and reevaluations be done about every 3 years, but it's been happening basically yearly lately. And that is because of the continual demands. And this kind of relates also to the discussion we've had recently about populations in the region, because we are seeing a not total stagnation, but not a huge amount of growth, like a percentage of the national growth rate. Not a good one necessarily for the future if you're worried about it. But again, it's not drainage of people yet. Anyway, I have a lot of mixed emotions about it. What's noted here, and kind of what I was hinting at when it comes to some of the questions y'all had about, okay, if there is this maybe not population growth going on, why is there still so much demand? And that can be seen, I think definitely relates to, in other ways, the lack of availability of it. Noted by specifically El Paso Matters, ended up interviewing specifically someone with the Central Appraisal District, the Assistant Chief Appraiser, David Stone. And as he notes it, that there has been a lot of demand in the real estate market that usually, give or take, there's about like 6 months of inventory available, and that we're down to basically 1 month right now. So we're at like a sixth of the usual supply that is available. And I could see that doing some constraining issues when it comes to population growth, but also property values. So as much as development tends to raise, having more stuff makes an area more valuable, not having enough stuff arguably as well, building and availability of it, is arguably also seeing a raise in the rates, because when supply decreases but demand is still there, the cost of it tends to go up. So that's a very brief approach of it. Again, would encourage anyone, particularly on notes of how to contest your property tax valuation and how that ends up working, noted towards the end of the story. Again, elpasomatters.org, the ones with that up right now. Tritasac noting that there are market values and cap values for those with exemptions. Cap value only allows for a 10% increase from previous year's taxable value, but market value can increase exponentially and annually. That is basically true. Because even if you had a 10% valuation increase this year, doesn't mean it can't continue increase next year, even if your overall, like your total appraisal hasn't changed of like what you have the property valued at by, say, your own third party. If there's still that gap, it's still going to rise to meet it. No real getting away from the tax man, among other things. So that's one of the things going on, and something that y'all have been bringing up and concerned about. And so that's true. And I'll keep in mind, with stash houses comes crime and probably other issues involving properties. Everything's connected in so many different and surprising and upsetting ways. Anyway, let's take that next break right now. Coming out of this break, we'll talk more about when it comes to immigration and issues along with it. Big changes projected and possibly underway for the Bridge of the Americas, among other things. So we'll take that break right now. You are, of course, tuned in to Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. A whole lot more that we're discussing here today, so stay tuned. More Talk El Paso on News Radio 690 KTSM. Don't go anywhere.
Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
I'm Fidel Moreno Mesa with your CBS 4 News Update. U.S. Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg is in New Mexico as part of the Biden-Harris administration's Investing in America tour. Buttigieg arrived in Albuquerque on Tuesday. He's expected to be in Las Cruces today, Wednesday. Before arriving in Las Cruces, Buttigieg will be in Deming to speak about safety investments to reduce traffic fatalities and underserved communities. A defiant former President Trump returned to Florida to address supporters following his arrest and arraignment in New York yesterday. Trump pleaded not guilty in a Manhattan courtroom to 34 felony counts of falsifying business records. District Attorney Alan Bragg's indictment alleges Trump concealed hush money payments to 3 individuals, threatening to reveal negative information about him during the 2016 election. For more news headlines, head to our website at cbs4local.com. I'm Fidel Moreno Mesa with your CBS 4 News Update.
News Radio 690. Traffic all day.
From the KFOX 14 Severe Weather Center, I'm Chief Meteorologist Brad Montgomery. Cold start again for tomorrow morning. We're looking at lows back down into the 30s, some areas lower 40s. Still a coat jacket morning for Thursday. Breezy as well. Winds are going to go easterly to southeasterly about 10 to 25 plus miles per hour. A little gustier on the west side. We'll see a warmer high in the afternoon around 72 degrees. Maybe a 10% chance of a shower. More gusty winds for your Friday with a high around 70. From the KFOX 14 Severe Weather Center, I'm Chief Meteorologist Brad Montgomery.
This report is sponsored by Dell Technologies.
The Dell Technologies semi-annual sale starts now with savings on select business PCs powered by 12th Gen Intel Core processors. Plus save on select monitors and accessories and get free shipping on everything. Call a Dell Technologies advisor at 877-ASK-DELL.
I've tried a lot of language learning apps lately, and Rosetta Stone is hands down my favorite. I love that it teaches you phrases you can use in real-life conversations. And they have the best speech recognition tool. It tells you how accurate your pronunciation is, so you can really nail your accent. Learn almost any language you want, like Spanish, Italian, Chinese, and Korean. Or get access to all 25 languages for life with Rosetta Stone's lifetime unlimited subscription. Check it out at rosettastone.com.
It's time for the Paso del Norte Gun Show this Saturday and Sunday, April 15th and 16th at the El Maida Shrine Temple, 6331 Alabama. Check out edged weapons and Western memorabilia. Buy, trade, sell, or browse the gun show. Saturday from 9 to 5, Sunday 10 to 4. Adults $7. Ages 18 and under $5. Must be accompanied by an adult. No pets allowed. Free parking. Don't miss the original Spring Paso del Norte Gun Show this Saturday and Sunday, April 15th and 16th.
For the local issues and discussion you won't get anywhere else, turn to Talk El Paso, weekdays at 4 right here on News Radio 690 KTSM, brought to you in part by the El Paso Community Foundation. Sound off on what matters to you, Monday through Friday, 4 to 6 p.m., and let's talk El Paso.
I'm Ben Ferguson.
And I'm Ted Cruz. Donald Trump has been indicted. It's an outrageous abuse of power.
Learn why.
We'll explain what's really happening with the Trump indictment.
So download Verdict with Ted Cruz wherever you get your podcasts.
This report is sponsored by Verdict with Ted Cruz.
I have an uncomfortable stat for you. 1 in 9 men will be diagnosed with prostate cancer. 1 in 9. In fact, prostate cancer is the second leading cause of death in American men. That hurts to hear. But you know what doesn't? There's a simple blood test your own doctor can give you to see if you're at risk. And this blood test, called the PSA, is definitely not a pain in the butt to get. Don't waste your time poking around the internet. To find out more about this test, go to pcf.org. For all the best info on prostate cancer prevention, go to pcf.org today.
News Radio 690 KTSM El Paso.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thanks for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live, streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app or on our various socials, facebook.com/Talk El Paso, more or less the main one, but a lot of other comments and suggestions, comments, questions, etc. Conversation, that's another good one. Over on there, you can find us again, other Facebook pages, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. And if you're having issues for it, try some digital percussive maintenance, as Eric Van Holstein Raffala did. Got back off and then back on after not seeing some of the other comments. Digital percussive maintenance means turn it back off and turn it on again, because you can't hit, at least not the same way you could, like, say, a steam boiler. Can't hit it to get it to work. So that's the closest that we can get. Anyway, a lot of conversation going on, including updates on that celebration of life for, of course, a member of the legendary Texas Western College, later UTEP 1966 NCAA championship team, Willie Cager. The event is now set for this Friday, or the coming Friday, next Friday, April 14th, 7 p.m. at the Don Haskins Center. The event will be free and open to the public. It's expected that Cager's family, friends, and teammates will share their recollections of a life well lived at the event. Cager, of course, died middle of last month at 81 years old. And had the chance to speak with him a couple of times by phone, primarily. He was a candidate during the inception of this show for mayor of El Paso, and didn't actually show up for our interviews or for the debate/forum that we ended up holding at that point in time. But it was interesting conversations I recall having with him before We tried to have those set up anyway, and the reasons he was running, given that wasn't totally able to be communicated to the general population since he didn't end up participating. But again, that celebration of his life for Willie Cager next Friday, April 14th, 7 p.m. at the Don Haskins Center. And another interesting one from our news partners over at KFOX 14, an extended interview with a survivor of that deadly fire in Ciudad Juarez at the Immigration Detention Center, who's now recovering in an El Paso hospital. Did mention earlier in the week, as the fallout from that was still beginning to develop, that there was the offer for medical services and even transportation to the U.S. side of things. So the interview specifically with Eduardo Descrudo Caraballo Lopez from Venezuela specifically, and he was inside the facility when the fire broke out. So some of the excerpts in the web story that you can see from our news partners at KFOX 14, again titled "Deadly Juarez Fire Survivor Speaks Out While Recovering in El Paso Hospital." Just some of the harrowing situations, including breathing through a box in order to try to get away from the smoke that he was being trapped in with, as there was not an opening of the bars, among other things, and being treated for carbon monoxide inhalation in El Paso right now. So interesting details from that, as there is still a lot more fallout that is coming forth from that whole situation, including the recent visit from the Mexican president, Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador, and calling for further prosecutions, the charging of the individual who was charged with actually setting that fire in that just creepy, I'm going to call it creepy, that selfie in the back of the vehicle he was being detained in before being taken to that center. It's like a cop, back of the cop car selfie. Like, who, I don't even get that mentality, I gotta say. But on a completely different vein, when it comes to immigration and border security issues, we had some discussion earlier on in the year when we had that visit, one of the national visits, I should say, specifically that of President Joe Biden coming to the area. And the amount of time spent around the Bridge of the Americas was of particular interest to me and many others who even brought that to my attention, of some of the significance of it, including the hundreds of millions of dollars that are expected to be put into it and have been announced by the General Services Administration with the federal government. And our news partners further at KFOX 14 have more details on the proposed changes to the major port of entry that is the Bridge of the Americas on the U.S. side of things, including some options that could see some serious changes for that area, the south end of 54 as it then progresses in there. There's a lot of demand in that area. And of course, the cargo part of it is not by any means the least, even if the part that you and I probably feel the most comes from the traffic, the either eastbound or westbound lanes and I-10 backing up well into the travel lanes, even off of the on-ramps just about every day, it feels like these days. Anytime I go by there around, say this point during the day, yeah, it's more likely than not to be a little bit of a nightmare and a very careful driving situation, I gotta say. So some of the proposed changes include where there could be a whole lot more acquisition of land. So there was during a meeting that was being held, particularly near the Paisano Green community and some of the ones, the communities surrounding that area. Had a community meeting yesterday specifically. Now, none of the proposals that would put forth affect the housing that's nearby there, the Paisano Green community, but there are others that could potentially impact land nearby or even the land itself of the County Coliseum. And that brings up a lot of questions. Design one essentially would keep it within the existing footprint with the, let's just call it, passenger lanes and passenger vehicles being primarily in the footprint that it currently is, and some revamping of those facilities and some revamping of then the cargo services area that's basically on the other side of 54. Then there's also the option to see more land acquisition of the property just south of the Coliseum, kind of in that expansive footprint if you've ever been by the area. And then the final option would see a whole lot more revamping and taking over of the land of the County Coliseum itself. So some of those actual graphs and diagrams over on the web story from our news partners at KFOX 14. And again, to talk about this being hundreds of millions of dollars being put into this year, like I want to say 100, 160 is what sticks in my mind. Need to double check some of that. The actual requests for proposals, among other things, are out and available online. But kind of the timeline we're looking at with it here is that once a design is selected, the design will then begin in 2024, and then construction to begin in 2027, and expected to begin in be completed, that is, in 2031. Yeah, this is not going to be a fun process for anyone involved in or surrounding that particular area. Again, Bridge of the Americas, south end of 54, as it then heads towards to the U.S.-Mexico border. Yeah, fun stuff. There are some more details on it over on gsa.org if you want to wade through that. And currently sits on 28 acres, but the actual process. Let's call it a decimal point off. $650 to $700 million projects, or at the very least, that's what it was initially, I think. Okay, maybe I'll need to double check on some of the numbers on what it will actually be, but yeah, I would be damn near surprised if this wasn't actually going to be several $100 million project. There is more meetings expected from that, so they've got a link to it over with our news partners at KFOX 14. So that's one of the major things going on. Also, just mentioning of the Texas legislature, a Senate bill that has been now passed, both making it out of committee and now passed on the floor. Senate Bill 23, suggested and proposed by Senator Joan Huffman, Republican out of the Houston area. Judges won't be able to offer people charged with some gun-related crimes the opportunity to have convictions wiped from their records if they even if they can successfully complete probation, as noted by the Texas Tribune. Even if there was recommended probation, minimum 10 years for some of it. So there's a lot of potential impacts when it comes to that. But let's go ahead and take that next break right now, as there's a whole lot going on in and around and upcoming to affect the community, and I'm sure want to hear from y'all as we usually do. So let's go ahead and open up those phone lines as we normally do during this point of the program. So if you want to get on that line, add in your 2 cents, and we'll respond to some more of the questions that have come in here as well. That number to call is 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
I-10 westbound at the 54 Patriot exit. A heavy congestion there is blocking 2 right interchange ramps. Stop and go traffic. You're going to run into a little of it. 5-minute delays westbound on the I-10 from Airway to the Patriot. I-10 eastbound is slow from Trans Mountain to the Patriot with 11-minute delays. And on eastbound Artcraft, it's slow with 25-minute delays from the state line to the I-10. Kerry Edwards, El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by Staples Stores. Staples has everything you need to travel, from passport photos to luggage, and now get 20% off your in-store purchase when you buy any travel service. Plus 80-count Lysol wipes are just $1.99. In-store only. Offer ends 4/8. Exclusions apply. Get all set to jet at Staples.
I'm Martin Hoke, the inventor of Navage Nasal Care, and I love Navage. I've told you about how your nose is the body's air filter, that Navage's powered suction will help flush out allergens, viruses, mucus, and germs, and that Navage will help you breathe better. But what do other people say about Navage? Like Ricardo, quote, "This is one of the greatest inventions ever. I know this may sound like I'm exaggerating, but this sucker is amazing. The first time I did it, I couldn't believe what came out of my sinuses. I could breathe with ease. My wife just bought one too. Thank you for this product," unquote. He's one of over 100,000 online reviews praising Navage, the all-natural solution trusted by over 3 million people to help you breathe better, sleep deeper, snore less, and stay healthier without drugs. Navage is available at Walmart, CVS, Walgreens, Target, Rite Aid, and online. Navage, N-A-V-A-G-E, clean nose, healthy life.
With Seagram's Escapes, you can turn a daily chore into a vacation, an ordinary dinner into a lively cookout, your Wednesdays into an early weekend, or any situation into something extraordinary. Seagram's Escapes make happiness happen. Enjoy responsibly. 2023 Seagram Beverage Company, Rochester, New York. Flavored malt beverages.
with an open channel.
I guess just try to keep channels open.
We welcome open-minded individuals.
I try to keep an open mind to all issues.
With open arms.
I think we need to always have our eyes open.
For open conversation. And when you open the iHeartRadio app, you open a whole new world. Wherever you are.
What should America do about immigration crisis?
I guess open the borders, but at the same time, check everyone that's coming in.
Open the gates.
A free download in the App Store or at ktsmradio.com.
The How to Money podcast helps you live a richer life by teaching you how to handle the money you have in a more thoughtful, purposeful way. Join hosts Joel and Matt for personal finance nuggets that actually make a difference in your life.
Well, the number one rule of cheap travel is to let the deal drive the destination. Bali, it might not be on your radar, but if the price is right, it should be.
Right, yeah. When you take this tactic, it allows you to travel more because you're doing it for so much less money.
Listen to How to Money on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcast.
Getting a news feed on your phone while driving
makes driving more difficult. This is dangerous.
Getting a news feed without a computer or mobile device?
It would be impossible.
Unless, of course, you get your live news feeds at the top and bottom of the hour.
It's easy.
Traffic and weather all day.
It's as simple as that.
Trending stories tend to change.
Every minute of every day.
Twice an hour, we'll feed your curiosity.
Stay informed. Shouldn't we listen? They're hungry.
News Radio 690 KTSM.
El Paso Children's Hospital is excited to welcome Dr. Jonathan Chow, ENT, and Dr. Amanda Chow, audiologist, to our new pediatric ear, nose, and throat clinic, where we will now offer cochlear implants. Serving a 350-mile radius, there's only one El Paso Children's Hospital.
Freedom of speech lives here.
To me, freedom of speech is being able to say anything you want.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
What do eggs, the bunny, and other things that remind us of Easter have to do with the holiday? We'll have the story of our Easter traditions. Be sure to listen to this week's edition of Our American Stories on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hip, knee, or back pain? See if Arch Supports can help you at the Good Feet store.
Being aware of the world around you is important.
When it comes to news, yes, I am.
So we're feeding your need to know 24/7 at the top and bottom of the hour.
I like to know what's going on in my locality, abroad.
Events of the world.
Fairly so. Yeah, I'm pretty connected.
Or down the street.
For the most part, I know what's going on.
You know, I need to be aware and what to look out for, and I'm real cautious, so yeah, I need to have that.
It's what we do. News Radio 690 KTSM. El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages. We're up on these days, facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter at Talk El Paso, or twitch.tv, Andrew J. Polk. A lot of comments coming in there, including some questions about what was some of the information about the causes, nationality, reasons for the fire at the Juarez Immigration Detention Center. And that's the source of some of the prosecution that has now been announced, particularly the person that said it. I do believe was a Venezuelan individual. Can't find the name here immediately, but some of the other things that have been said about it. I don't know if it's actually part of like the arrests or the pending prosecution on the Juarez side of things. I mean, they do things differently there, but about wanting to get out of there. But there's probably a whole lot more to come, and I'm sure a lot will be said about it. And also, Eric von Holstein Rathload, very much getting the digital percussive maintenance like an old TV. Sometimes you have to get it a good whack. I find threatening inanimate objects to work out the best for me for my maintenance needs. But also, RJ promotes on the whole property taxes and property values. We do live in the fourth hottest real estate market in the USA. So if you're investing, life is good. Paying taxes, ... could suck. I agree entirely. And at least one person also chiming in about that. Well, okay. So to my understanding, in the limited way that I've had to deal with it, homestead exemptions are for your primary residence, but at least one person chiming in on the show saying that aware of someone in his neighborhood running an Airbnb out of their house, a year of reviews of people who have stayed. So for a minute now, and still has a homestead exemption listed on the EPCAD website. That just sounds like maybe a dumb criminal moment if you're that verifiably in the wrong. But again, maybe I just don't share that mindset. Anyway, we got calls in line. We'll be getting more to those here in just a minute, but we don't want to shortchange anyone by, only got a couple of minutes before before I have to take that next break. So at least one other question that did come up and I wanted to follow up on is reminded that about what is going on with some of those major projects in town, including the cost for the Chihuahuas Stadium. And I mean, the cost of it, and we're in now the 10th season, of course. There is still a lot of money that's been spent on it, and even as recently as like 2018, it was expected that cost would continue on for the city, but it's been noted at the start of this year, specifically from KTSM.com, no relation, that was actually from City Council. I'll need to delve into the full City Council agenda to verify this, but that there has been a 5-year maintenance plan of Southwest University Park, $5.8 million, but that in this point, there is no longer a subsidization being required of the ballpark or of its income. So that's an interesting changeover. It was anticipated that the ballpark would become profitable for the city side of things by last year, as it was, so that appears to be bearing out at the very least, but there's a whole lot more to delve into with those numbers. So that's just the initial one based on a question that came up yesterday. So let's go ahead and take that next break right now. Coming out of this, we'll get to those phone calls. We'll get to those comments. We'll get to everything that I hope we do pretty well on this and this program at this point in time, which is hearing from you all and having those conversations. So stay tuned. More after this break. If you're on the line, stay there. If you want to get on the line, don't forget that number, 915-544-5876, 544 KTSM. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso on News Radio 690 KTSM. Don't go anywhere.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
I-10 westbound at the 54 Patriot exit. A heavy congestion there is blocking 2 right interchange ramps. Stop and go traffic. You're going to run into a little of it. 5-minute delays westbound on the I-10 from Airway to the Patriot. I-10 eastbound is slow from Trans Mountain to the Patriot with 11-minute delays. And on eastbound Artcraft, it's slow with 25-minute delays from the state line to the I-10. Kerry Edwards, El Paso traffic.
I always wanted to learn Spanish, but I never thought I'd have the time. Then I discovered Babbel.
Babbel's lessons are fun. They only take like 10 or 15 minutes, and in 3 weeks, presto, you're starting to speak another language. Like magic.
I love that Babbel's lessons aren't just robots talking. They're voiced by native speakers, so you get the pronunciation just right. And they're designed by real language teachers, so you learn how to have real-world conversations, things you'll actually use.
It's incredible. After using Babbel, I'm ready to start having real conversations in French.
There's all kinds of ways to learn. Use Babbel's podcasts or games or videos. You can even join live classes with a language teacher.
If you want to learn a language, there's no faster, easier, better way than
Babbel.
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 Babbel. Évidemment.
Go to Babbel.com to try for free. That's Babbel.com. Babbel.com.
Records, milestones, firsts, lasts, and everything in between. What happened today in sports history on iHeartRadio?
What's happening, fellow sports fans? It's Andy West. Let's take a look back on this day in sports history, April 4th. We'll start off today back in 1983, a replay you may have seen a few times in your life. Lorenzo Charles scores on a dunk after Derek Wittenberg's 35-foot desperation shot falls short to give Jim Valvano's NC State team a 54-52 win over Houston in the NCAA championship. Today in 1993, Mario Andretti at age 53 wins the Valvoline 200 in Phoenix to become the oldest driver to win an IndyCar race and the first driver to win a race in 4 different decades. And today in 2005, Dimitri Young becomes the third player to hit 3 homers on opening day to lead Detroit over Kansas City 11-2. In 2018, Matt Davidson of the White Sox became the 4th player to do this on opening day.
Now you know, today in sports history on iHeartRadio.
City streets or small towns, everyone deserves a clean, green community. We are Keep America Beautiful, the nonprofit working to end littering, improve recycling, and beautify communities. Let's do beautiful things. Visit KAB.org.
News on the hour and a half. Traffic and weather all day. News Radio 690 is KTSM AM El Paso, an iHeart radio station.
NBC News Radio. I'm Brian Shook. Former Vice President Mike Pence will not appeal a federal judge's order that he testify in an ongoing investigation of former President Trump's attempt to overturn the 2020 election.
That's according to his advisor. Pence's decision to comply will give special counsel Jack Smith access to one of the key figures with insight into Trump's efforts to remain in power. This comes after U.S. District Court Chief Judge James Boasberg ruled last week that immunity shouldn't prevent Pence from testifying about conversations related to alleged illegal activity on the part of the former president. It's unclear exactly when the former Veep will appear before the grand jury in Washington, D.C. I'm Lisa Taylor.
Former President Trump may go to trial just as the Republican presidential primaries kick off. Trump faces dozens of criminal counts in New York City related to alleged illegal hush money payments to kill negative information before the 2016 election. Prosecutors in the case are pushing for the trial to start in January 2024, just before the primaries in Iowa and New Hampshire. The National Weather Service says it looks like a high-end EF2 tornado hit Missouri early this morning. The Weather Service says the tornado had peak wind speeds of 130 miles an hour in Bollinger County, south of St. Louis. Bollinger County Sheriff Casey Graham said at least 5 people died in the storm. The White House says Tuesday night's election of a liberal judge to the Wisconsin Supreme Court shows Americans want reproductive freedom.
The message from voters has been clear. Americans want the freedom to make reproductive health care decisions without government interference.
White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre said Americans have consistently shown they support access to abortion following the Supreme Court's decision to overturn Roe v. Wade. At the closing bell, the Dow Jones gained 80 points to 33,482. You're listening to the latest from NBC News Radio. South Korea's president is hosting a delegation from the U.S. House Foreign Affairs Committee in Seoul. Chris Gilbert says the delegation will discuss the Seoul-Washington alliance ahead of a summit with President Biden later this month.
President Yoon Suk-yeol will meet with committee chairman Michael McCaul and 7 other U.S. lawmakers at his presidential office. No details on the discussion have been provided, but it's expected to cover a possible address by Yoon to Congress when he visits the U.S. later this month. Whether or not he delivers that speech depends on the invitation of House Speaker Kevin McCarthy. Seoul and Washington have bolstered their joint defense exercises in response to North Korea's developing nuclear and missile threats.
Many illegal immigrants who cross into Texas are being stuffed into stash houses. The Border Patrol is releasing new videos showing a group of nearly 100 people who were jammed into a small El Paso home. They say the Mexicans and Central Americans are treated like prisoners in degrading conditions. Stash houses are increasingly common in South Texas. Health warnings are being issued related to an Easter fan favorite.
Certain colors of Peeps marshmallows are being linked to cancer. The artificial coloring called red dye number 3 is a known carcinogen. Consumer Reports flagged 9 different Peeps and other candies manufactured by Just Born Quality Confections, including pink and lavender Peeps, along with hot tamales candy and wildberry marshmallow bunnies. I'm Mark Mayfield.
A pair of former Oklahoma jail guards who forced inmates to listen to Baby Shark as punishment have been put on probation. The judge also ordered them to pay a $200 fine. Gregory Butler Jr. and Christian Mills both pled guilty to a misdemeanor cruelty charge. An investigation found they forced inmates to stand for long periods of time and played children's music loudly on a loop. Brian Shook, NBC News Radio.
Now, your chance to win $1,000. Enter this nationwide keyword on our website. Green. That's green. Enter it now.
This report is sponsored by the Truth with Lisa Booth podcast.
Chinese leader Xi Jinping and Russian President Vladimir Putin recently met in Moscow as their relationship grows cozier. Rebecca Koffler, military intelligence analyst, joins me to break it all down. Listen to the Truth with Lisa Booth every Monday and Thursday, but you can listen throughout the week on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hi, I'm Burt Ward, Robin from TV's Batman, inviting you to feed your dog natural, non-GMO, Gentle Giants dog and puppy food. Dogs eating Gentle Giants and following our special feeding and care program are living as long as 27 healthy, active years with a wonderful quality of life. Holy wow, 27 years! Think of all the extra years you could enjoy with your dog at Target, H-E-B, and stores near you. Try Gentle Giants cat and kitten food, too.
Rosetta Stone, where language is learned. RosettaStone.com.
Only iHeartRadio gives you access to all of your favorite radio stations.
It's Elliot in the morning.
Rover's Morning Glory.
Booker and Stryker.
All of the once-in-a-lifetime events.
Alter Ego, are you ready?
All of the best free curated playlists.
Nobody does it better.
All of the great podcasts for every interest.
This is Freddie Prinze Jr. from the Wrestling with Freddie podcast.
All of the mind-blowing contests.
$20,000.
Awesome. All of your favorite superstars.
We're the Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Best of all, it doesn't cost a thing. Listen on the free iHeartRadio app for all your music, radio, and podcasts.
Text and work. Text and pretend to work. Text and act surprised when someone calls you out for not working.
Who, me?
Text and whatever, just don't text and drive. Visit StopTextsStopWrecks.org. A message from NHTSA and the Ad Council.
Stay tuned and stay informed with News Radio 690 KTSM, an iHeart radio station. News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for joining us and tuning in however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages we're up on these days, facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter at Talk El Paso, or twitch.tv, Andrew J. Polk. However you're doing it, however you're getting at us, however you are participating in the show to the level of your comfort, etc., etc. That's the right place for you to be as we continue our mission to talk about the things that affect us here in the borderland like no one else is gonna, because they don't live here, affected by the things here, have those perspectives, and there are a lot of perspectives. So if you want to add your 2 cents that way, particularly by voice, calling in, number to do so, 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. I'm not sure if we're having any of those steam-powered radio issues that we sometimes run into, but if you're going to call in and we haven't gotten to you yet on the phone, just make sure you stay on the line there, because there's at least a couple calls that we're trying to get to during the break where it sounded like I was either a pocket dial, which this would be a weird one for me, or someone had put us down and was moving around. So just stay there until we can address you to make sure we know you're actually on the line and it isn't like an issue with the call. Just a note there. But again, just keep that number handy. It is available at the moment. That could fill up at any moment, 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. So let's go ahead and jump in on the phone lines right now. Though a couple other comments I'd said I'd want to address right before that. Ronaldo Rivera asking, has El Paso ever considered a moratorium on tax increases or spending until we get the budget under control? Short answer, no, but it's kind of happened. There was no tax increase. Well, there was the 2 different ways that we've talked about. There was the no new revenue budget that was passed by County Commissioners Court in like 2020, 2021. And then there was the technical tax rate decrease that was done by City Council in the same time frame, even though it wasn't enough it kept tax rates flat, but with an increase in valuations, it's still effectively paying more in taxes. There's a whole lot to go on there. So I think City Council, if I'm remembering correctly, has essentially gotten close, but hasn't actually reduced them yet. Yeah. So the short answer, kind of, but not really. Because, I mean, okay, these valuations are certainly oh man, this is how much I could get taxed on. The real rubber hitting the road moment absolutely comes from the decisions of the individual taxing entities. Because if they decided that, oh no, we're actually going to keep the tax rates flat, they could. Either in terms of not raising the rates, which would still cost you more money, or of actually lowering the rates. I mean, that's technically what County Commissioners Court did. They lowered the tax rate in order to keep it revenue neutral for their portion of the bill anyway. Again, your mileage is absolutely going to vary depending on the different taxing entities that you're a part of, the school districts. Yeah. So, yeah, Market Mandingo tax rate stable, but valuation going up. Yeah, and some other intimations about what this season is like. Let's just put it that way. Filed some of mine today, which is just so fun. So let's go ahead and get to that phone line now. Again, that number to call, 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. We do have Raul in the Northeastern line with us right now. Raul, thanks for joining us.
Hey, Andrew. I've heard discussion on this program about the Mexican drug cartels and the evil of the Mexican drug cartels. Why should the Mexican government care if there are Americans who want to pay to get illegal drugs? How is drug-using Americanos their problem? Let's suppose, just for the sake of supposition, that Mexico made tobacco illegal because it kills people, because it makes people sick. It is a bad product, bad drug. And the fact of the matter is that the most abused drugs are prescription drugs. Ever hear of Purdue Pharma and OxyContin?
Sure,
and
the opioid
Sackler
crisis.
Family? It caused Rush Limbaugh to lose his hearing, and a bunch of people to die and get super sick. Okay, so
Sure.
New Mexico collecting, I was reading about $214 million in taxes on the sale of pot.
Yeah, give or take.
So the war against pot was such a failure of conservatism that eventually, after having spent billions of dollars over generations and ruining thousands of people's lives, primarily of color, people of color's lives, over it, when tobacco and alcohol are legal. Hey, Barbara, join MAD. Hey, let's have a campaign against tobacco. It kills people. It makes people sick. Remember Prohibition? So the
Not
same goes for
personally, but
gambling and
yes.
prostitution. All these laws against these behaviors, all they do is create black markets. They don't stop the behavior. They don't stop the provision of those services for those behaviors. And so the law is a funny thing. A lot of time it's what the people with money want. Too many times it seems to be like that. For example, here's another idea. How about monogamy? Suppose it was part of my religion. Remember what happened to the Mormons in the United States over there?
Again, I wasn't
Who
there,
voted
but
for
sure.
monogamy? Is it in the Constitution? So what you end up having is when you have unjust laws, they breed mistrust for the law, and they aren't obeyed. Not all laws are just, by the way, and should not be obeyed, and perhaps should be disobeyed.
Okay, I get what you're saying there, but also I think, frankly, case in point where you're talking about there, the whole Purdue Pharma, OxyContin, opioid crisis we're seeing in this country and continue to do so. I know it's fallen off with other major issues that are taking precedence when it comes to the whole illicit drug arena, including fentanyl and all of those awful things. But specifically on the opioids, the entry point for a lot of people on there wasn't there's this demand that we got to do with it. It was the supply and the fact that it was being supplied and in fact oversupplied legally that then led people down this primrose path of death and destruction for their personal lives. And that's why there have been billions of dollars of consequences. And frankly, I'm not ashamed to say, I don't think it's enough. I think that the settlements that were part of this were probably not sufficient because, if you start only talking, people should have faced jail time over this. I just frankly don't think there's any other way that this could have been put furthermore as this is unacceptable. Anyone that profited off of destroying people's lives to such a great extent, yeah, it's just beyond. So, yeah, sure, they're bringing it back to the whole drug situation. There absolutely is a demand in this country, and that absolutely is a contribution. There's the whole, what is the phrase as it goes? Not exactly triangular trade, but, drugs and smuggling goes north and money and guns go south when it comes to the U.S.-Mexico border. That has been the situation for a long time, and it sounds like you're in agreement with AMLO there, Andrés Manuel López Obrador, the president of Mexico, about, the drugs is a U.S. problem. And yet, that is incredibly short-sighted because, okay, going back to the prohibition point, again, don't remember it because wasn't there, but I know the reference of what you're referring to. It didn't necessarily actually come down to about the individuals consuming it or not. It came down to the consortiums that were then being empowered by the bootlegging in those cases, rum running, those kind of fun antiquated phrases that weren't so fun at the time, of course. and the power it gave to those organizations. What was it, like the Black Hand or the Syndicate, as it was in Chicago and many other places? I mean, it was present in our area of the border as well. Make no mistake. That's actually one of the, not totally inciting things, but an actual, one of the major first enforcement areas for the Border Patrol in terms of its beginning history, the closing of the frontier, of those kind of situations. They were seriously dealing with prohibition. So it's not even necessarily the individual use that comes along with it, or even the supposition of societal decay that comes with it, but the empowering of the organizations that are therefore profiting massively off of it. That I do not get AMLO's position on that, because sure, if you don't care about the drugs, you don't feel like your people are using them, which is insanely short-sighted in its own right, because they absolutely are. The empowerment of the organizations that end up just being profit-seeking at any cost. That's really what they come down to, and the way they figured out they could make the most money is from drugs, but then also all the other ways, whether it be the smuggling, human or otherwise, whether it be the corruption, human or otherwise, or stealing of just other things. There are literally cartels that are now in the telecommunications pirating business, for lack of a better term, setting up their own cell networks and also preying on the existing ones for data piracy, basically what it comes down to, or even on Mexico's petroleum industry, tapping into and just straight up stealing from that as well. So for him to say, no, this is just a U.S. problem. If y'all just weren't so coked up, it wouldn't be so much of an issue. Like, seriously, that's, I got to say, that's just short-sighted. And to not say that, sure, demand and the supply of it is certainly an issue, but if you're also not focusing on the supply part of it, you're literally missing a huge chunk of the conversation. And again, the power that's given to these organizations.
Make it legal. That makes it, you make the case to go make it legal and tax it, because you're not going to stop it otherwise. It's always been there, and it will continue to be there. And on this side, some people finally dawned on them, well, maybe we ought to make this marijuana thing legal and make some money from it and tax it and stop spending all this money on it and targeting primarily minorities and having a prison industrial complex for these folks, And yet it's the white folks that use the drugs as much as the brown folks who use them and sell them. But, it seems like there's always been a two-tiered level of justice here in this country. One for those rich and powerful folks who can afford lots of attorneys and good attorneys, and those for everybody else. If it wasn't for Donald Trump having all this money, he would have already been in jail. He's got all these attorneys that can fight all the way to the Supreme Court and lose there too, but nonetheless, it defers justice, and justice deferred and delayed is sometimes justice denied.
I mean, the idea of unequal justice certainly is a problem here, even if, we were having such a good time on, I think, an interesting discussion right up until that last broken record moment. But I got to say, there are some experiments that are going on. I want to say it's in the Pacific Northwest, like Portland, Seattle type areas that have tried the whole legalize everything, or at very least don't enforce the prohibitions or use restrictions on everything. And I'm not totally liking what I'm seeing coming out of there in terms of, well, what's being then drawn to it. So whether or not, I mean, there's jokes out there of I'd like to congratulate drugs for winning the war on drugs, because just doing it as anyone even touching it is a bad person kind of situation is not reflective of the reality of it and the reasons people, again, the whole opioid situation and the crisis has been caused by that, showing that people who even think that, I didn't realize the consequences, being sucked into it and therefore having their lives ruined, shows that maybe there should be off-ramps as opposed to solely just enforcement. So coming down with the hammer as opposed to any kind of interdiction, compassionate use, those kind of programs that we haven't even begun to see here in this country. There's a whole rainbow of options and of spectrum of possibilities with this, but just saying, just open up the floodgates, bring it all on, I'm not going to say that that's going to be necessarily a good option either. So we got to take that next break now. Appreciate the point in the call for what the local impact and concern of it is. But we got to take that next break. Coming out of this break, we'll get to more calls, more points, more comments on the line, as well as on the social media. A bunch of those coming up there. So if you want to add your 2 cents, don't forget that phone number, 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. Remember to stay on the line. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
traffic all day. News Radio 690.
Long delays on the I-10 eastbound through downtown, all the way back to Santa Fe after a vehicle is blocking 2 left lanes on I-10 eastbound at Copia Street exit. 25-minute delays. On the 54 north at the Hercules Avenue on-ramp, police are responding to a crash there. I-10 westbound at the 54 Patriot exit. 2 right interchange ramps are blocked due to heavy congestion. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by the Ben Ferguson Podcast.
Coming up on the Ben Ferguson Podcast, former President Donald Trump indicted by a grand jury in New York. So does this mean that he can still run for president? Absolutely. I'm going to explain to you what the law says. Download the Ben Ferguson Podcast now.
The How to Money podcast helps you live a richer life by teaching you how to handle the money you have in a more thoughtful, purposeful way. Join hosts Joel and Matt for personal finance nuggets that actually make a difference in your life.
Well, the number one rule of cheap travel is to let the deal drive the destination. Bali, it might not be on your radar, but if the price is right, it should be.
Right, yeah. When you take this tactic, it allows you to travel more because you're doing it for so much less money.
Listen to How to Money on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcasts.
No, not now. That sounds like it's going to cost you.
I know what to do. I'm going to cashnetusa.com. I can apply in minutes, get an instant decision, and if approved, I could have the money in my account as soon as the same business day.
When you need money fast, be the hero. Go to cashnetusa.com to apply for the money you need now. The exact timing as to when your loan funds will be available will be determined by your banking institution.
We see them every day. People driving using their phones. There's a sneaker peeker or the fast scroller who can quickly become the fender bender-er, the got a ticketer, or the driver who killed someone. Pay attention or pay the price. You drive, you text, you pay. Paid for by NHTSA.
This your captain. Better buckle your seatbelts for this one. I saw my passport expired, so I went to Staples, got a passport photo lickety-split. While I was there, I grabbed some tiny travel soap and shampoo. I should have got some for my co-pilot. Just kidding, Brad.
Staples has everything you need to travel. 10-minute passport photos, luggage, headphones, even personal travel items. And now at Staples, get 20% off your in-store purchase when you buy any travel service. Plus, 80-count Lysol wipes are just $1.99. Get all set to jet at Staples. Offers end 4/8. In-store only. Exclusions apply.
We see them every day. People driving, using their phones. There's the sneaker peeker or the fast scroller who can quickly become the fender benderer, the got a ticketer, or the driver who killed someone. Pay attention or pay the price. You drive, you text, you pay. Paid for by NHTSA.
The most current and comprehensive. Just minutes away at the top and bottom of the hour. And always online at KTSMradio.com. News Radio 690 KTSM El Paso.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be tuning in, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or a lot of different ways you can do so. Whatever works best for you is the right place for you to be as we talk about the things that affect us here in the Borderland and continue our mission to just have live local talk radio in the Borderland. So there's a lot of comments here, a lot of issues coming in, particularly on the idea of drugs, legalization therein. Calvin Williams also appreciate the wave. And the idea of, some of the safe use programs being discussed, among other things. And also just Mexican politics in general, including the mordida money and how it's doled out. I mean, there's a whole lot. You mentioned the cartels, and it's easy to just call it, I think as the previous caller referred to, evil organizations, but there's so much more wrapped up in it. So, yeah, a lot of stuff we're discussing there. But there's a whole lot more that we'll also be continuing to get into. And again, if you want to get on the line, full up at the moment. There's also Juan's over on the YouTube. Appreciate you chiming in. If you want to get on the line, full up at the moment. But that number to call is, of course, 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. Let's get to another call on the line. We do have Tony on the east side with us right now. Tony, thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks. Good afternoon.
Afternoon there. What's on your mind?
Adding a little information. The reason the lines are so long at the border, not Christmas season or anything particular, it's because the geniuses on the other side of the border decided to put these cattle guards, big cement things, make cars
Okay.
through so that they don't get somebody running the border
Okay.
on the Mexican side. So guess what? We've got 8 lanes on one end, and on the other side, you've got everybody funneling into one lane. And typical like our city, already looking at spending a lot of money instead of addressing a problem that could resolve it. Because even though you have places for people to get in line with, you're still idling thousands of cars, wasting gas, and polluting. I thought we wanted to go green. One way to go green is not having cars idling.
Yeah, and that definitely was one of
on end.
that's one of the concerns that was brought up in that most recent community meeting. They don't have the next one posted yet, but yeah, the pollution in the area and there being a whole lot more potentially being there. I hadn't heard that part about the response on the other side, so that's interesting. I will say that of the hundreds of millions of dollars being considered from that, given that this is a international port of entry, that will largely fall, if not entirely, of this pot of the revamping of it anyway, from federal funds. So, I mean, still taxpayer funds, but at the very least not solely locally focused. I am sure there will be some involvement of local funds as well. There are programs such as staffing, like public-private partnerships on staffing at the bridges that have been proposed and have happened locally. So I'm not saying there will be no local funds involved in this, but the biggest chunk of change will be coming from the federal government in these projects that also will be stretching into the 2030s. So this isn't going to be quick by any means.
Yeah. Well, besides the money, just consider the thousands of man-hours that are wasted by people sitting behind the steering wheel, not going anywhere. It's ridiculous waste. Now, the other point that I want to chime in real quick on is, you mentioned it would. How would it turn out if we blow the border open? Drug-wise. The border is open drug-wise, and this is how it's turning out. There's deaths left and right. When there's money to be made, they will be pushing drugs onto our kids because they're so cheap while we're out working a living. Pushers are in the schools across the street, just at the boundary they need to be, giving free candy to kids, and soon enough, get home and you've got an addicted kid. So no, we need to tie the hands of the drugs, the pushers, everybody pushing that, and make it so something as dangerous is not that readily available.
Yeah, I mean, addiction, don't get me wrong, is not a minor thing by any way, shape, or form, and it definitely needs to be addressed both on the supply and on the demand side of it. Treatment for those that have found themselves in the grips of addiction, prosecution for those that are therefore supplying it. But, I mean, it's taken on a whole new tone and tenor when it comes to the introduction of fentanyl that essentially, if it's something that can be grown, if you didn't grow it or know who did, immediately you have no real reasonable way to be able to trust what it is or its provenance or what is in it, given the way that, fentanyl sprays can happen these days. So don't get me wrong, addiction and, kids becoming addicted, absolutely still a huge major concern, but maybe being overshadowed these days by the specter of them being just straight up killed by it.
Sure, and then with the law or the lack of law, pushers get away scot-free when there's a Democrat involved in the courts. So you got these guys doing it again and again. It's pathetic in every angle. Appreciate it.
Yeah, sure thing. Thanks for the point of the call. You have a good one there.
You got it. Take care.
I mean, there's a whole lot messed up in this whole situation. Let me just say that as a shorthand. But when we get into the specificity of it, what needs to be done is I often call for a multifaceted approach, because if you just want to look at the enforcement of it, sure, there are going to be able to be crackdowns and ways that you can stop some of it, though trying to figure out how much is actually being stopped is often the bugaboo with the whole situation, because you don't know what you don't know. There's only estimations on how much has gotten through or been able to get out there. Calvin Williams saying, get the USDA involved to make the cartels put labels on their drugs, because I'll absolutely trust that even if it was fully legalized. I mean, there's still smuggling of otherwise legal substances that are also taxed. Just the whole getting away from the revenues. Moonshine, for crying out loud. Anyway, point is that, I don't know if I trust the cartels even doing that, but if we're just looking at any one aspect of it, whether it be just the enforcement side of it, as much as we've seen with the human smuggling situation, you look at only focusing on that side of it, you're just going to see more essentially squeaking through the cracks, more pressure to get it through the cracks, if at all possible. Again, you all really need to see those pictures for those particularly out in Radio Land over with our news partners at KFOX 14 of the suits that individuals were wearing while they were just attempting a by-foot crossing found in that cave near the Van Horn area. That's kind of a case in point, an example of what greater pressure and demand, therefore, can then lead to, even just in that own simple way. But yeah, if we're not also working on the demand side of it, we're missing part of the picture, because if we get this whole ravenous subpopulation, it's if that's not being dealt with, again, it's literally missing half the picture. So let's get to at least one more call on the line before we take that next break. We do have Luis in Isleta on the line with us right now. Luis, thanks for joining us.
Hello, Andrew.
Hey there. What's on your mind?
I haven't heard of any sheriff jailer layoffs for not having anybody in jail for drug sales. So I don't know what that's all about. But the reason I called you was yesterday. I tried to get through and I couldn't.
No.
There was a guy named Ben going on and on about Hillary, about stuff being swept under the rug. If I recall correctly, she sat there for 8 hours in a congressional hearing. Is that not correct, Andrew?
I think it was way more than 8 hours, if I'm remembering correctly, depending on which part you're talking
I
about.
don't want the guy that calls in and says that Raul doesn't have any facts and he just likes to, that guy should come in with his own game instead of attacking Raul, because Raul comes with game. But Ben, Stuttering Ben, that's who it was. It was Stuttering Ben.
Okay.
How can he sit there and say, going on and on, that Hillary stuff was swept underneath the rug? They go on and on about 33,000 emails. I think there was only 4 emails of which she cooperated. And she sat there, not like other people that didn't even show up for the January hearings. Jim Jordan, Trump, Trump's last, what do you call that position? The office staff guy? What's his name? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Chief of staff, I think you mean.
Yes, chief of staff. They didn't show up. So I wish people would not. It would be like that guy, Millionaire Martin or Richard, saying you should click on him. Ben is so far down that conspiracy rabbit hole, he's turned himself into a pretzel. That really got me yesterday. He thought nobody heard that. Swept stuff under the rug when she sat there for some grilling, and she answered, and she was there, Andrew. And that's all I got to say. Thanks, Andrew. Have a good evening.
Sure thing. Thanks for the point in the call. You have a good one there. I mean, I will say that, again, I come down on it, that anytime we're talking about jailing of political opponents, primarily because they're political opponents, I mean, if someone has done wrong and should be held culpable to the law, that should be followed through with. But whenever these things come out primarily and say political consequences, yeah, I find a level of discomfort, regardless of what direction it's coming from or aimed at, because that just smacks of some serious third world stuff. Anyway, let's go ahead and take that next break right now. Coming out of this break, we got more calls in line. We got more comments coming in. We got more stuff that we will be getting into as we get closer towards the end of the show, but inexorably moving forward to it. But hey, we got a lot more that we'll try to address. If you want to get on that line, don't forget that number to call, 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM, 544-KTSM. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Hello, everyone. This is Robert Olguin with your KFOX 14 News Update. There are some proposed changes to the Bridge of the Americas International Port of Entry that could have a major impact on the South Central El Paso community. The General Services Administration held a community meeting yesterday where they presented several design concepts that could be implemented at the bridge. One design would keep the majority of the bridge activity as is and would not impact the nearby Paisano Green community or the County Coliseum. But one of the designs is drastic. It would include purchasing the County Coliseum. The area of the Coliseum would be used to reroute trucks to a new location where inspections could take place. A design won't be chosen until 2024, and then construction would begin in 2027. DPS special agents say they found a stash house in El Paso yesterday. The stash house was managed by a naturalized U.S. citizen, according to DPS. who was originally from Mexico. He was arrested and charged with operating a stash house. 23 adult male migrants from Mexico, El Salvador, and Guatemala were found inside the house. This has been your KFOX 14 News Update. I'm Robert Olguin.
News Radio 690. Traffic all day.
I-10 eastbound at Copia, a vehicle blocking a couple of left lanes has caused a huge 35-minute delay all the way back to Yandell, right through the downtown area. I-10 westbound slow from Hunter Viscount exit to the Patriot with 10-minute delays. In the East Valley, southbound on Loop 375, an accident's blocking the left lane approaching the 601 spur. It's causing a 10-minute delay. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
From the KFOX 14 Severe Weather Center, I'm Chief Meteorologist Brad Montgomery. Cold start again for tomorrow morning. We're looking at lows back down into the 30s, some areas lower 40s. Still a coat jacket morning for Thursday. Breezy as well. Winds are going to go easterly to southeasterly about 10 to 25 plus miles per hour. A little gustier on the west side. We'll see a warmer high in the afternoon around 72 degrees. Maybe a 10% chance of a shower. More gusty winds for your Friday with a high around 70. From the KFOX 14 Severe Weather Center, I'm Chief Meteorologist Brad Montgomery.
This report is sponsored by Red Pilled America.
How have big tech companies become monopolies? And perhaps more importantly, should anything be done to stop them? To find the answer, Red Pilled America follows the untold origin story of YouTube. Listen to Red Pilled America on the iHeartRadio app or anywhere you get podcasts. That's Red Pilled America.
Prescriptions require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if appropriate. Restrictions apply. See website for details and important safety information. Subscription required. Price varies based on product and subscription plan.
Hey guys, did you know there's a generic form of Viagra that works just the same, but is 95% cheaper? And you can get it online? Just go to 4hims.com/radio. Through Hims, you'll get a free medical consultation, discreet shipping if prescribed, a 100% online process, and trusted generic alternatives to the name brands at up to 95% off. That's right, get generic for Viagra, the same active ingredient as brand name Viagra, but for 95% less. It's the same medication, still prescribed by a licensed medical provider, but with zero copay, no expensive appointments, and no awkward face-to-face conversations. To start your free online visit, you need to go to this exclusive address, 4hims.com/radio. That's 4hims.com/radio for your free online visit. FORHIMS.com/RADIO.
Original MTV VJ Martha Quinn here. Pearl Specialties Olives are bursting with flavor and add the perfect Mediterranean twist to everyday meals and snacks. Rock your recipes with Pearl Specialties Olives. For quality you can trust, look for the Sunny Yellow Jar at your local Walmart.
This report is sponsored by Pearl Specialties Olives in the Sunny Yellow Jar.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live, streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages we're up on these days, facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter at Talk El Paso, or twitch.tv, Andrew J. Polk. Again, a lot of ways you can communicate, add in your 2 cents, or again, call in if you really want to. That line available now, 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. And a lot of conversation going on some of those previous caller talks, including Trito Sack over on the YouTube saying that nothing results from congressional hearings. The caller is naive. I mean, okay, just about any proceeding within the legislature comes down to either legislative or essentially political consequences. Same kind of things we've been talking about during the more recent hearings, shall we say, in that they can either kind of draft legislation out of it or the most specific legal consequences amounting to contempt of Congress, of which some were more recently held. But I mean, that along with even, say, impeachment come down to political consequences, not generally legal ones out of their proceedings. Anyway, so a lot more conversations and things being brought up here, including, where was it? Marky Mandingo on the whole taxes issue saying $7,000 in taxes are hard to swallow when back in 2006, when we bought it, they were $3,700. So yeah, roughly doubling of taxes I could see being unfun. And I'm very not excited to find out how that's going to be changing for me this year. Yeah. Anyway, I'll let you know when my letter comes in and what that cost change percent breakdown is, so I can figure it out. Anyway, let's go back to those phone lines now. We do have Frankie and Messia on the line with us right now. Frankie, thanks for joining us.
Did I hear you correctly that a move is afoot to increase your property taxes 10 to 20%? Did I hear that correctly?
In parts. The part of it is that the valuations are going up somewhere in that range. I mean, some people who have called in and said that they're looking at, say, a $20,000, $25,000 or so increase in the valuation on their home may or may not break down to 10 or 20%, but that's the range we're expecting. And of course, the major difference would come from what the taxing entities are due. But if all other things remain equal, yeah, it would end up equaling that in the aggregate.
In the words of the great John McEnroe, you cannot be serious. I spoke to you guys and girls out there in El Paso. What the heck happened to your $33 billion slush fund that your governor, Abbott and Costello, was going to cut loose $15 billion to reduce the property tax? This whole thing is upside down. Am I right or wrong?
I'm not calling you wrong, but I am going to say it's more complicated than that because, among other things, the state doesn't set the property taxes. It's all the many myriad taxing entities down at the county or even municipal level. City of El Paso, County of El Paso, independent school districts, what do we also? We got community colleges, special taxing zones, water improvement districts. All of these different entities have their own slice of the pie, and they all set their own rates, which is why, even though these valuation increases that people are starting to come and get the notice of doesn't immediately relate to an increase in taxes, there are, I'd call them at least even odds that it could end up becoming one overall once all of these taxing entities are taken into consideration.
This is insane. I can't get the words out. I mean, what the heck are you people doing out there in El Paso? You are getting screwed over 14 different ways of Sunday. Are you paying attention out there? This is in your pocketbook, for crying out loud. Now, having said that, let me talk about something else, about drugs.
Sure.
The whole thing, Texas 5,000, blah, 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 and so forth, fentanyl laws. Let me tell you something. When I was in the business, I did the best we could, given the constraints we had on our particular judicial system.
Okay.
Now, you want to get rid of drugs in the United States, you have to get draconian. And by that I mean you need to remove that specific point in our judicial system relative to due process. You want to stop drugs, they do not fall within the vein of our judicial system. End of story, end of drugs. Simple as that, Andrew. Boom. That's my comment.
I want to clarify you here. I mean, I get the idea of wanting to seriously crack down on it, but are we talking about going all the way to say what former Philippines President Duarte was doing about even extrajudicial killings in the streets?
Well, okay, Duarte, when he was doing more specifically, if you want to get into the nitty gritty of it, I read way back when, 1949, when the Chinese communists finally took over the nationalists, Mao Zedong.
No, sure.
They had a serious drug problem in China.
Yep.
And the communists said, okay, all you people that are all drugged out, you report to the detoxification centers. All you people out there supplying drugs, if we catch you, you are summarily executed. Right now, today, they don't have a drug problem. Oh, they are producing lots and lots of fentanyl that's coming over here. And this is perfect capitalization, demand, supply. We here in the United States, not me, you, or anybody else, we want our drugs. The demand. And there's people out there, capitalistic-wise, are going to supply it. Now, you want to stop it? You need to go draconian. Simple as that. No other way about it. It's not going to work any other way. Simple as that.
That's I don't know if I will fully agree with you on there. I would agree that more effort's needed towards it, but once we start getting beyond legal processes, including very specifically due process, Fourth and Fifth Amendments, as we're discussing here, that gets real fiddly for me, because that ends up becoming a once you open those floodgates, they're real hard to close again, either for that specific situation or seeing that flood encompass even other issues of, well, it works so well here. Why do we worry about this for other people? So, like, I get it. You think it's serious, and I will fully agree with you that it's a serious problem. And yeah, there's even, intimations, analysis that I've heard, not direct statements I can point to from the Chinese government or other ways, but of this essentially being the current situation, revenge for the opium wars that happened and were imposed on them by the British. Were certainly a part of it, but the U.S., even in nascent as it was back in like the 1800s, was also an absolute part of it. So, I mean, I'm not in favor of what they're doing, but I don't know if going straight, extrajudicially anything, whether it be a summary movement past it or otherwise completely outside the system, is something I'm going to be in favor of for, frankly, any issue.
Yeah, I hear you. I'm not talking about a spillover. I mean, you've got to have a carve-out, if you will. I'm not talking about the standard aspects of normal thinking, judicial process for normal people that bump up against the process. Nothing wrong with that. Absolutely no. No. I'm talking about the aspect where you need to get buttoned down and knock this out of the box. Because if you're going to use our judicial system and apply it to this kind of thing where these people don't care about our judicial system, you know what? Let me put it this way. I love it. The United States suffers, goes down the dumps into Hades, falls apart, but before our last breath, we say, you know what? Even though we are dead and dying, we had due process. How stupid is that? Come on, Andrew. Give me a break here.
Again, I don't disagree with you on the seriousness of the situation. I just don't think that we'll be holding on to due process on the sinking ship. I think that removing or anything affecting due process would hasten it. I gotta say.
Well, okay. Yeah, I mean, I'd love to talk some more about this,
Yeah,
but
fair enough.
yeah, I mean, this is crazy. I mean, if we can knock it out of the box for the reasons I just said. Now, if we're going to not do it, then we're going to continue to suffer under this kind of circumstance. This is wussy nonsense. There's other kind of words I want to use, but I can't. You know why.
Well,
right?
I appreciate the choice.
Anyway, it was a lot of fun. You have a good day, Andrew.
Yeah, sure thing. Thanks for the point in the call. You have a good one there.
Okay.
What I will say is that when it comes to things to be done in the meantime, because, this is not let's just hope for the best kind of situation. There's a lot bad when it comes to the drugs, the smuggling, all the the cartels in general. Let's just use that as the blanket situation. And I think that would be a good place to start, is with the cartels. Now, whether or not it can be reasonable to expect that AMLO is going to come around and stop saying, that's not really our problem, while ignoring the massive impacts happening within his own country because, the drugs aren't there, except they're still absolutely there. Anyway, point is that and clamping down on those organizations, I think before we get to anything like that, would be an excellent start. Make no mistake. All right, I think we have time for at least one more call on the line before we end up getting towards the end of the program here. We do have Eric on the east side with us right now. Eric, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, I was going to say, the war on drugs is highly, it's failed and it's cost government, taxpayers, a ton of money. If you want to go after cartels, you should look into legalizing drugs, starting off with marijuana especially, but conservatives aren't interested in actual solutions. They're always looking for simple solutions involving guns and whatnot. Like they oppose treating addiction and increasing access to mental health care. A lot of people self-medicate and then end up in an addicted lifestyle. But, it's important to understand that conservatives oppose financing increased access to addiction and services and mental health care. Like that will actually reduce, drug problems. Like we need actual solutions, not just this rhetoric. Like conservatives that, now all of a sudden they're concerned about fentanyl. That's all bad faith. That's just to demonize Christian Hispanic immigrants. They don't care about drug users.
Whoa. Okay. I'm going to stop you right there. So you're saying that fentanyl being the number one killer of like 18 to 45-year-olds is that people aren't concerned with that, and anyone putting that forth here is they're just worried about immigrants? Because I'm worried about that, and also think that we should have immigration reform and things going on. So I don't think it's a reasonable argument to even put forth that anyone concerned about fentanyl is simply anti-immigration. That sounds reductum ad ridiculum, frankly.
Yeah, well, hard drugs have been killing Americans for decades, and now all of a sudden they're concerned. You know, if you listen to congressional hearings and how Republicans talk about fentanyl, it's always in the context of demonizing immigrants and promoting racist narratives about open borders. They're not, like if you look at Biden recently, he wanted to increase access to drug testing kits, that would save lives from fentanyl. But, Republicans were against that because, it makes increases access to safe drug use, which they're more, they're opposed to actual measures that will save lives from these drug overdose deaths. They don't care about drug users.
I'm not saying there aren't people out there saying that. There demonstrably are, even some who comment on this program when it comes down to the idea of Narcan being out there, not as a testing you're referring to there, but as a treatment option for it. Because, there definitely is this pervasive idea out there with some on that, well, they've gotten what they deserved, or anyone involved with drugs, this is their just desserts, which in my mind ignores the fact that we are seeing a lot of people who didn't even know that they were being involved with illicit drugs, or not to that level, reaping the consequences for something that they did not even necessarily do totally knowledgeably or even willingly. We're talking about counterfeiting happening, and there being literal malicious attacks involving the substance. So no, I reject anyone that puts forth that, we shouldn't do that, because it comes down to like, we shouldn't have life jackets because that just will promote people to swim dangerously. Like, there is both personal responsibility, sure, and anyone that is knowingly getting involved with illegal drugs probably should stop doing that and face probably legal consequences. But also, I'll note that use of illegal drugs in no way in this country carries the death sentence. So simply saying that, they're getting what they deserve, no, that doesn't fly with me. But I also think there are plenty of people who agree with that as well. Because to say that, we just got to deal with this. Seriously, we have had even like first responders who have come with inadvertent contact with these substances in the completion of their duties. They're responding to these types of emergencies, ending up getting exposed to what would be lethal levels because it's so minuscule. So it's insidious, it's bad, and if you're wanting to paint with broad strokes, I'm not going to be able to take away your paintbrush, but I'll just point out that there are, among other things, like, say, in the state of Texas, bills that have moved through, and some of the actual items that have been put forth as priority items, say, by Governor Greg Abbott, as being focused on responding to and making more available, particularly in schools, such as Narcan or other treatment and response options. Because, sure, if someone just wants to focus on enforcement, I'm not saying that enforcement is going to be a bad thing, but only on enforcement is missing some of the larger questions on it here. So let's try to put out just in terms of when it comes to this issue, what would you actually like to see being done then?
Well, combating the disinformation you just promoted right now about fentanyl, people just accidentally touching it or getting a whiff of it, that's all law enforcement scare tactics and disinformation, involving it. So, that's a good place to start. Combating disinformation. Majority of people who are dying from this are in fact people consuming street illicit drugs on the streets. They're not just random people.
That's also what I said.
It. And that there's a lot of misinformation going around about that, and that's part of the bad faith efforts to reduce deaths involving it. But people, conservatives, they oppose financing mental health treatment and addiction treatment.
Okay, if not actually going to answer the question about what would you like to see done besides, here's the thing that really gets me when we keep going around in these circles. We're not actually disagreeing on the idea that fentanyl is bad and there should be more response to it, but you're so focused on wanting to slap around people that you disagree with politically that you are missing the larger points here. If you disagree with people, that's fine. We certainly delve into that more often than not on this program. But if I'm literally giving you an option to say, what would you like to see done? And then going straight back to, but these people are awful. I don't even know what to say to you when it comes to that. If you want to focus on solutions and what can be done about it and talking about it, we can do that. But if you're literally just like that laser focus on slapping people around, tell me what you stand for before you tell me what other people are bad for, my dude. Anyway, we're out of time here for this segment. We got to take that next break now. So thanks for the point in the call for what it's worth. I hope we can be a little bit more productive with it in the future because, again, listening to what's actually being talked about is pretty important. I just got to say that. Don't realize I would need to, but sometimes this place goes and conversations go in weird twists and turns. Anyway, taking that quick break. Till we got coming up for you on the program after this, so stay tuned. More Talk El Paso after this break here on News Radio 690.
Back to Talk El Paso
KTSM
on News Radio 690.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
The good news, I-10 eastbound at Copia Street, all lanes are back open. The not so great news, I-10 eastbound at Piedra Street, an accident reported, police responding. Stop and go traffic, still 35-minute delays eastbound on the 10 from Yandell. In the East Valley on Loop 375 southbound, approaching the spur, a crash there's blocking the left lane and 10-minute delays. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by Our American Stories.
What do eggs, the bunny, and other things that remind us of Easter have to do with the holiday? We'll have the story of our Easter traditions. Be sure to listen to this week's edition of Our American Stories on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts.
The How to Money podcast helps you live a richer life by teaching you how to handle the money you have in a more thoughtful, purposeful way. Join hosts Joel and Matt for personal finance nuggets that actually make a difference in your life.
Well, the number one rule of cheap travel is to let the deal drive the destination. Bali, it might not be on your radar, but if the price is right, it should be.
Right, yeah. When you take this tactic, it allows you to travel more because you're doing it for so much less money.
Listen to How to Money on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcasts.
The El Paso Community Foundation supports the causes you feel passionate about here in the Borderland, whether it's education, social services, arts and culture, the environment, health, or economic development. The El Paso Community Foundation has been promoting philanthropy and progress in our hometown region for more than 45 years. Make your mark with us. Start a fund today. For good, for El Paso, forever. Learn more at epcf.org. That's epcf.org.
This is a special alert to all Americans who own a vehicle with less than 200,000 miles with an auto warranty about to expire or with no warranty coverage at all. Due to a decline in the economy, CarShield is announcing a low-cost month-to-month vehicle protection plan that is now available to the public to save any driver out-of-pocket expenses on future auto repairs. Call now to find out how you can pay almost nothing for covered auto repairs. Yes, you heard that correctly. Pay almost nothing for covered auto repairs. An open phone line has been established for all drivers to call for a free quick quote. Call 800-989-8906 now. Drivers who are covered will not have to pay for covered repairs again. This protection plan is at an all-time low. Additionally, drivers who activate this vehicle protection today will also receive free roadside assistance, free towing, and car rental options at no additional cost. Call us for your free quick quote today. 800-989-8906. That's 800-989-8906. What do you have to lose? Call 800-989-8906. Again, 800-989-8906.
News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for having joined us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I've been your host, Andrew J. Polk. We are beyond out of time here today. So, a lot more that we'll be getting into, more conversations, more of, well, all the stuff that we try to do the best that we can anyway. I've talked about the things affecting us here in the Borderlands. So, we'll do it again tomorrow, 4 to 6 p.m. But in the meantime, some of the stuff we got coming up for you, including more of those financial discussions on kind of what you should be considering going on now when it comes to your financials, as we're looking at maybe the end of that inflation rate combating plan. But we'll be checking in with Jay Ratliff specifically tomorrow. So stay tuned for that. But otherwise, we'll have to leave it there for the day. Beyond that time, but we'll do it again tomorrow as we do every Monday through Friday, 4 to 6 p.m. So to everyone who did tune in, call in, comment, participate in the show, do appreciate it. And we'll do it again. So until then, until next time, stay safe out there. Look twice for motorcycles when out on the road. And have a great evening, y'all. We'll see you then.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
I-10 eastbound's got lots of delays. From Schuster to Trowbridge, it's a 20-minute delay due to earlier crashes, now cleared. Southbound on the loop in the East Valley approaching the spur, there's an accident blocking the left lane, 10-minute delays there. Border Highway eastbound from before Padres to Socorro, it's a 10-minute delay. A crash is blocking the left lane southbound on Zaragoza at Rich Beam. Kerry Edwards, El Paso traffic.
Golden Voice presents Power Trip. Guns N' Roses, Iron Maiden, AC/DC, Ozzy Osbourne, Metallica, Tool. You'll have pit tickets for the entire Power Trip weekend. VIP camping at the Safari Tent Campground. All thanks to Golden Voice. Register now to buy tickets at powertrip.live. On sale tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern. Enter for your chance to win now. iHeartRadio.com/Power
News
Trip.
on the hour and a half. Traffic and weather all day. News Radio 690 is